So much of being a part of a competitive TCG does not happen at the table. There's deck building, which we've talked about. There's how you prepare and how you react afterwards. We're going to talk about that in future episodes. But then there's interaction with the brand, the company, the community. You have morale, you have trust, you have hype, you have excitement, you have controversies. This is Towers, a Metazoo podcast. My name is Ester, and today I want to prepare you for that element, the relationship with Metazoo and what that looks like as a competitive player. Every TCG has the elements that are really fun to engage with, and every TCG has had controversies. If you follow Magic the Gathering at all, they've been stepping in it left and right to the point where stock prices have been affected. Even Flesh and Blood, which I don't know if I've ever seen as much goodwill towards a TCG, had a controversy that almost sank the entire game. And Metazoo, of course, has its own things that you need to be aware of if you're going to be a part of this game and have a good time. This is going to be a constructive episode, and I'm not going to focus on what Metazoo does or does not do. I'm going to focus on you as a player and how you can have the best possible experience with this game. Something I have observed with content creators in this game that I've both watched and talked to is their attitude and the longevity of the content has a lot to do with the motivation behind it. We are dealing with incentives here. There is an influencer program where you can get spoiler reveals. There are both influencer and content creator medals. And I've talked to plenty of people who are worried about saying the wrong thing and jeopardizing their ability to receive one of those rewards. I'm not one of those people. I don't care. One of the best TCG content creators of all time is the professor over at Tolarian Community College. He covers Magic. I don't think there's a more wholesome individual on YouTube, let alone like covering a card game. He loves the players. He loves the game. He wants the game to do well, and he will be critical when need be. If I had a TCG, I'd really want content creators like that. And while I am coming from a different place than someone like the professor, Towers, a Metazoo podcast, is here for the players. I'm not really interested in like censoring or altering my messages and what I cover to maybe get like a special card. I want Metazoo to have a good reputation. I want them to grow. I want this company to be successful. But also, I'm here as a player. I show up. I use the cards that have been made available to us. I play. I want the thing to succeed. If it doesn't, I will go do other things. So let's get into the player survival guide for interacting with Metazoo, the company. I think it's very important to be realistic when you're engaging in something like a TCG, with who you're dealing with, what they're likely to do, what they're not likely to do. I think it can really improve your experience, and it also allows you to know at what point is it time to pack your bags and go somewhere else. At what point do you just stick it out because it's a temporary thing or it doesn't matter that much. For example, for me, I'm a collector. My goal with collecting was to collect the first 7 sets. I enjoy that. As long as Metazoo's putting out cards, it doesn't really matter what they do outside of that because I get to collect. I'm also a player. I want to play the game. The game is good. Ideally, I want to play in competitive events. We've been working hard to build the SoCal scene, and we're now having medal events. So that's great. They've made the new NPN. I really love the new NPN. As long as they can send medals to people, then that's fine. I really love Towers. I really love these national tournaments. I want to go to those. And those come with a lot of good things and a lot of hiccups. And if I wasn't real with the hiccups, I'd be setting myself up for a bad time. But if you're a new player, if you have not interacted with the company too much, this is a guide to help you know what you're in for so that you're prepared with some potential solutions for you. This episode's not for Metazoo, the company, though they're welcome to listen to it. And maybe I'll give them some advice they've heard 100 times at the end. So, number 1 of the survival guide. Take announcements with a grain of salt. You want to go to Flame Tower. You're really excited about Flame Tower. You set your alarm so that you can sign up for Flame Tower when the tower document told you to. You wake up and nothing happens. And then a week later, all of the details are pulled away from the Flame Tower. Maybe you drove 2 hours to a qualifier during the initial window after Earth Tower to qualify for Flame, and then they changed it to just the month of May. So then you drove 2 hours again to qualify again, and then all of the information is stripped and you don't even know if it counts. and you really want to go to Flame Tower. You want to meet new friends, you want to compete, you want to test your mettle against other casters, but you just don't know how to do that. You don't know where this thing is going to be at this point. You don't know if it's happening. You've gone on Discord, you've searched, you've seen the head of the company say the thing is not canceled. You'll have details in a week or two. You wait a week, nothing happens. You wait another week, nothing happens. Finally, they announce that you'll be able to sign up. And there are two attitudes you could take. You could pay attention to your recent experiences and say, maybe signups will happen this week. That would be nice, but I'm not going to count on it. I'm going to keep going about my life. Or maybe you hold to everything they're saying and you're just getting more and more frustrated. Resentment is building. You can only tolerate so many of these mistakes before you're going to leave the game. I experienced all of those things with Flame Towers. Not so much the bad feelings, because I took announcements with a grain of salt. I drove 2 hours to qualify after Earth Tower. I then did it again when they changed the window. I paid attention to announcements. I am terrible at sleeping, but I set my alarm so that I could sign up when signups were initially announced. I did it again when we thought signups were going to be, because I didn't want to miss out. Nothing happened on those days. And even recently, we finally had signups a few days ago. As far as I'm aware, to qualify, you still had to do things in May, though we don't know. There's no communication. And a few days ago, they said tomorrow we would have the dates. Like, we knew it was going to be in Dallas now, but we were going to have the dates, and that passed, and we don't have dates. Maybe by the time you're listening to this, we have dates. If you notice that I don't seem like particularly annoyed about this, but I'm not particularly stoked, like, I'm not going to make excuses for Metazoo. Back in the day, you had people who would defend Metazoo through anything, which I think was wrong, and you'd have people who hate Metazoo through anything, which I also think is wrong. Like, we just got to be real here. So when you see a Metazoo announcement, take that as a possibility. Don't take that as this is going to happen, because we just don't know, and they don't have the track record for that. Which brings us to the second part of the survival guide. Curve your expectations. I'm going to bring up a couple examples here, but the first are tower packs. So one of the things to hype up towers was the announcement that we were going to have tower packs at the towers. And a lot of us thought we gaslit ourselves. We're like, did they actually promise this? But if not, how did we all know about them? But we went and found screenshots, and they did indeed promise tower packs. Tower packs were going to be really cool. If you're going to the water tower and you want to immerse yourself in the lore and the feeling and that aura type, how much the better when you go there and you open up a pack and you can get full holo versions of staple water cards or alt arts of staple water cards. You are putting in the time and the effort and money to travel for Metazoo. Metazoo is rewarding you with these objects that just like ooze attention to detail and care. Of all things people were hyped for going into Water Tower, tower packs were a big one. There were people who were going partially for these packs as they'd seen the packs from Caster Cup, and not only how much those were worth, but like how much people valued those from a memory standpoint. But they started kind of like icing us out on like the idea of tower packs. And then just a few days before the tower, it was announced we're not going to have tower packs. We're not going to have spoiler packs either. Those are going to be at the next tower. People are grumpy. People were overpromised something that they were really excited about. Had it never been promised, they wouldn't know it existed. Nobody would have issues. And when we got to Water Tower, we were given that really dope D6. The full holo water aura was not something that was announced and is like one of my favorite cards. The tower promos were really great. We got the tower itself and then the building the tower. And then the merch available. Like, I love their plushies. The playmats are spectacular. There were so many good things there. But for a lot of people, despite all that good, they knew that Metazoo promised tower packs and there were no tower packs. Now, why this is such a good example is because people were really excited about the promos they got, and most of those promos were not announced. Had Metazoo not said anything about tower packs and then presented them, people would have been stoked. Had they not said anything, and then there was nothing, nobody would know better. But after Water Tower, there's a big announcement that said Earth Tower is going to be the real start of the tower circuit. Water Tower was just this small like test event, and now we're going to have tower packs. And you get to Earth Tower, and were there any tower packs? There were not any tower packs. They did it again. And this is something Metazoo's going to do a lot. Like, if you're participating in this game, you need to be prepared for this. You need to be prepared for them to promise you the moon and deliver you, I don't know, some moon rocks. And this goes both ways. I think it's one of Metazoo's greatest weaknesses and greatest strengths, because there are times they surprise you with something that's really neat. But for a game that can already suffer on a reputation standpoint, when it comes to delivery, it's not ideal. And it's also like really free not to tell people things. Number 3, communication. Don't expect it. Don't expect communication from the company. And I know that sounds harsh coming from me, but I'm being real. The example I'll use for this one is the Metazoo Gala. There's going to be a gala. It was a black tie event. It was a charity event. There was going to be an auction for original artwork. It was exclusive. You had to get invited to it. And even if you were invited, you needed to buy tickets in time. We knew it was going to happen the night before the tower. People booked their hotels around where the gala was, assuming the tower would be around there, even though it was elsewhere. But there was a lot we didn't know. Like, is the black tie dress code enforced? Can you not get in if you're wearing, say, a suit? We did get confirmations that suits were fine, but like black suits. So if you go with a blue suit, is that fine? If you're just in like business casual, is that fine? We didn't know. And I was in the line Friday night and there were people wondering like, is my dress code fine? We also didn't know, is there going to be food at this place? Are we all sitting down at a table and listening to speeches? Is it going to be a party? No idea. Outside of the venue, still didn't know. And then the big thing, gala boxes were talked about. But the story kept kind of changing on gala boxes, and most of these people knew take announcements with a grain of salt and curve your expectations. So there's kind of this suspicion that like maybe gala boxes aren't going to happen here. They were announced to be on eBay, and as we're hanging out in the gala, there's no table where you can buy merchandise. There's no table for gala boxes, which were things people were kind of expecting. And the night goes on. And we hear the gala boxes is sold out on eBay, and we haven't heard anything. And that's just kind of the grumble going around. Like, are these gala boxes a thing? When are they going to pass them out? We have a tournament early tomorrow morning. Sure, wearing formal wear with a bunch of card players is fun and can be fun, but like, is that what most people would be doing the night before a tournament rather than like sleeping or getting some last minute playtesting in? Hour after hour went by for this event that we knew nothing about going in, and a bunch of weird stuff happened. And I say weird, like, fondly here. Like, at one point, some staff came out and started passing out booster packs, and then they kept passing out booster packs, and then they started throwing booster packs, and I went outside, and I came back 20 minutes later, and now there's, like, dance music, and they're just like multiple people on stage just flinging booster packs out. It was like an hour later, I was talking with people, and every once in a while I'd get pinged in the back of the head with a booster pack. This wasn't announced. It wasn't announced that we're going to have like a version of one of those like arcade machines where you go in and grab as much money as possible. It was just an hour of exhausted judges and R&D just throwing out packs. And still, we don't know anything about gala boxes. We don't know anything about auctions. We like don't know what we're doing there outside of whatever you feel like doing in an underground little like music venue. We very much made our own fun. But man, there's a lot of grumble about those gala boxes because people wanted to go home. I wanted to go home. I was ready to leave. I had seen enough. I had talked to people. I had added another bizarre experience to my novelty journal. But I didn't want to just like leave if they were going to pass out these gala boxes like 15 minutes later. But if they're going to pass them out at 1 a.m., like I didn't want to stay until 1 a.m. I didn't care that much. But a lot of people showed up specifically for these. And this isn't something where, like, there is a conspiracy to hold this information back. Like, nobody knew. The staff didn't know. Like, we didn't know if those were even there. And we knew, based on Metazoo's track record, that, like, it's possible they weren't there. And if they weren't going to tell us about it. It was possible that they had them, and then they were going to pass them out at 1 a.m. We knew all of these were a possibility because, like, we're dealing with Metazoo. And this is one of Metazoo's weaknesses, is there's no real communication or transparency. Eventually, the whispers go around, like line up at the door, you can get gala boxes and then you can go home. And that's what happened. You know, had they told us at the start of the night at 11, we're going to pass these out, people would have just been able to be happy and enjoy themselves. There wouldn't be any seeds of resentment, but that wasn't the case. And the seeds of resentment come from the worry of being hurt or let down again. Like, it's a whole thing in psychology. People had previous experiences, but they still wanted the thing. This was a neat exclusive item, but they didn't know anything about it. And like, we didn't know anything about the gala in general. I went knowing that I knew nothing about it, and that was the fun for me, is like, what does this mean? What does it mean for a TCG to have a gala? Like, I absolutely have to see this. And I don't regret it, but I didn't regret it because I knew that I didn't know what I was getting in for. And to bring this back specifically to towers and the competitive elements, because this podcast is about preparing us all for towers so we can get in that top 32, so we can get as high as possible. And that comes with prize money. And I have won prize money for the first time. And I learned this lesson the hard way. Don't spend prize money until it's in your pocket. Now, I could afford to do this, but when I got home, I knew I had $500 coming to me. Within a week, they had asked for my PayPal information, and I spent it preparing for the next tower. I bought a possessed aura, I bought some staples I wanted to invest it in future tower experience. And that's like not a huge deal on my part, but some people, won thousands of dollars, $10,000 or $20,000. And right now, nobody's been paid. Not for Water Tower, not for Earth Tower. Like, I could imagine winning first place and taking my team out for dinner that night and spending $600, and like, you'd be out that money so far because going back to the beforehand of like no communication, no transparency, it's just the reality of the company we're dealing with. You just don't know when that money's coming. So as you prepare, when you go to the tower, whenever it's going to happen, and you apply your deck building, you apply the techniques you've learned, and you get to the point where you've in theory won money, that's money question mark. Like, enjoy the glory, enjoy your top 32 medal, enjoy your playmat, and know that maybe you're going to get money at some point in the future, but like, don't spend it until it's in your pocket. For the sake of transparency on my end, when it came to the other element of the prizing, which for me was $500 of product, it took about a month and a half for me to get the details to actually redeem that prizing, which I did, and I'm excited. I have 10 Seance spellbooks coming my way, which I look forward to cracking open and see if I can get any of those Hateful Eights. Now, you've made it this far in the survival guide. I hope this is useful. Yeah, I'm not normally one to give like life advice on this podcast. I do try to focus on towers, and all of the points I talked about today are very relevant to towers. But in general, it's wise to know who you're dealing with. There are friendships that could burn you really badly because you have expectations that they're just not going to fulfill. But there are people you can be friends with if you know what to expect from them, so long as you're realistic about it. Every card game has their hiccups and issues. It can be very frustrating when those feel so easy to do or not to do. In this case, like, communication is free. However, like, I don't know what's going on in the behind the scenes of this company. It could be that there's a secret CEO playbook that says never admit fault, never admit wrongdoing, never put anything online coming out of your socials that anyone could hold against you or hold as an example of you doing anything but stellar. Like, that could be a death blow to companies. I don't know. I'm not running a big company. Now, as I said, this episode isn't for Metazoo, but if any of you Metazoo decision makers are listening, I will give you a couple pieces of free advice. Beyond that, hire me as a consultant. This isn't my job, but I do want the company to be successful. And you've heard this a bunch of times, but it's just a matter of communicating and being transparent whenever you can. I know this may be hard to believe, but your player base are adults. Many of them have their own companies. The players tend to be in the late 20s, 30s, and 40s. You can be real with them. We know this is an indie company. We know you have limitations. We've been to towers. We see the miracles that are pulled off. You can be real. And to expand on that, the game is great. The player base is my favorite player base I've ever experienced in gaming. We love your judges. Vizier is a legend. The judge staff is great. And R&D too. Really, most of the people Texas Tad have great reputations in the company. And while I don't think you should use your workers as shields, I do want to let you know, if you didn't, that the reputation there is good. If you paid Vizier for it, please give that man a raise. And he was willing. If he came out and told us hey, we're really excited for Flame Tower, but we don't have a location. We're looking at these 3 spots. Depending on how many people sign up, we're going to try to pick one. And we have an 80% chance of getting that. That would go a long way. You got players with kids and jobs who need PTO. I'm very lucky. I can do my job whenever I want, and I can do my job on the road, so I can just travel to whatever. But most people aren't like that. And I am in these shops, I'm at these tournaments, I'm in these Discords. People are frustrated, and they don't need to be. I don't expect you to listen to this because, you haven't listened to anybody else. And in the meantime, I'm going to take those announcements with a grain of salt. I'm going to curb my expectations, and I will decide the level of involvement with the game I can afford as a result of those things. You choose your relationship with Metazoo. You choose your level of investment. You choose how to interact with that. And that's easier said than done. We all obviously love this game. You are one of 100 people listening to this show right now, which means you're very dedicated to it. And even I can get caught in the trap. But I hope this advice was useful. Thank you everybody for listening to this episode. I will release the promised episodes once we have more concrete details about what's happening with towers. I've been a content creator for a long time, and there's a couple rules of content creation. One is don't do wasted effort. Right now, we don't know what's happening with towers. I don't want to put a bunch of effort into an episode and then release it when people have this big question mark. I want to release those when people are hyped, they're booking their tickets, they want to immerse themselves in the process. So I have some of those episodes. They are coming. I'm just going to release them at a time that makes sense for me. I'm out. We'll see you on the next one. Towers, a Metazoo podcast, was created by me, Ester Ellis. The cover art was made by Chandler Candela. Music by the Heatley Bros. More details in the description. Want to say hello? Follow the show on Instagram at Towers Podcast. Send me an email at towersgamepodcast@gmail.com and say hi in Metazoo's Discord servers. Many of the figures in Metazoo originate in indigenous lore, and I think it's important for me to acknowledge that I make this podcast on the traditional lands and home of the Tongva Nation. This game presents us with a rich opportunity to get in touch with the living cultures that surround us, and I hope you can take a moment to reflect on the history of the land you stand on and the figures in the cards you play.